It's really been a while since I gave you an update on weight loss, Weight Watchers, what I'm doing, the ups, the downs of trying to lose weight this year. And I guess I just wanted to be really transparent. And I also wanted to give you a rundown on my first month of Ozempic. If this is your first time stopping by, hi, my name is Holly. Welcome to my Northeast Ohio home, where I have started building this community right here with Manageable Living. And to me, part of Manageable Living is my weight loss journey. I just hadn't talked about it in a while. There's no reason. It just kept getting pushed back. And I guess that worked out for the better because I made some changes to my weight loss approach and now I get to share that experience with you. Am I still even doing Weight Watchers? And I have to say, those two things don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive, that you only have to do Weight Watchers or you only have to do the semaglutide, because I'm using the generic brand, the compounded version, not the actual Ozempic. You can use them in combination. However, I just really didn't feel like paying for the Weight Watchers app after a certain point because I was like, okay, kind of I know how to eat now. I am still using a lot of the same bases and principles, and I just switched over to the free version of MyFitnessPal, and also I'm using the guidance of my medical provider that I'm using with the Ozempic to do diet stuff and make some changes. I'll be honest, I was just as concerned as you might be of trying Ozempic or Wegovy or Mounjaro. Why did that take so long for me to figure out? Ozempic and Wegovy are semaglutide, Mounjaro is tirzepatide, and really the difference is that semaglutide is a single peptide therapy where the tirzepatide version is a dual peptide therapy and does cost more. And it really depends on how your body responds as to which one you should be on. And so I was just as concerned as you might be because, well, we hear things and I don't really watch the news, but you catch things and, I watch enough YouTube to know that it's kind of a hot button thing and some people have had some adverse reactions. And it was hard to make that decision. I have a friend who about almost 2 years ago at this point, so in early 2023 with the Mounjaro injectable pens, and so after she lost about 60 or 70 pounds, she kept trying to say, or even before she lost that much, she kept saying, why don't you try it? Why don't you try it? It's really not that bad. I had this group on and, if that's not a red flag. And so I don't know. I just didn't feel great about it. I kept trying to do things like I'm going to do the gym. I'm going to use kind of an outline of my old bodybuilding routine. I was still doing the Weight Watchers thing. I was spinning my wheels a lot and coming into roadblocks, and energy and life was getting in the way, all the excuses. But at the heart of it was my energy was tanking so bad. And I remember in the past when I had first started with my thyroid problems, energy and working out did not go hand in hand. Me forcing myself to work out made it worse. And then there was a point where once I got that leveled out with medication, then, after a week or two of exercise, then my energy would go back up like a normal person. And so now I'm back to a point where my energy is tanked. My labs looked fine, according to my doctor. And so it was like, okay, well, I guess I'm just in perimenopause, or at least starting that and just kind of struggling. And it's just a phase of life. And of course, I'm still watching YouTube as I do, because that's what I do. I watch YouTube. That's what drew me into YouTube is I am such a huge fan that why not get on it? So naturally with this realization, and also YouTube has enough of my demographic information that it decided to start showing me Chalene Johnson's channel. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember her from like Payo or Beachbody Days or whatever it was that she was doing. And so not every topic really caught my attention, but I would occasionally watch here and there. And then she had a podcast episode with Dr. Tina Moore, who is a functional medicine doctor who has been practicing for decades of understanding these peptide therapies. And they did a really good deep dive on these GLP-1s, what people are doing wrong, what they're missing, how to do them properly. And so then I was like, okay, worth thinking about, especially some of these benefits. But then I was still terrified because there's still stories going on. There's, how do you find a reputable doctor that knows what they're doing? It's a whole thing. So she even had like a guide on how to find a good medical provider or functional medicine person. And I just kept hesitating. Some of it was money. Some of it was still just, I just don't know. And so over the last, 6 or 7 months or so, I would occasionally watch more and more either of Dr. Tina Moore or some of the other functional medicine specialists, and they all kind of said a lot of the same things. Make sure you're actually lifting weights, that you're maintaining activity, that you're eating cleaner and keeping your protein up. So a lot of really good, basically reinforcing Weight Watchers, honestly, but then also adding this peptide tool, which is a natural therapy. Everyone's like, it's drugs. Like, okay, kind of you could say that because you need a prescription for it, but also like our bodies use GLP-1s and produce GLP-1s. And it's just a matter of maybe I'm deficient. And then also over the course of the last 6 or 7 months, I was also hearing my favorite radio personality that I've listened to for years. He was talking about his experience with tirzepatide and how he went with a particular practice in Ohio and how it's virtual and all this other stuff. And I'm like, what if I just schedule a consultation? It took me a while to get there, and I think after so many months of hearing his success and how he highly praised the practice and the doctors, I just felt like it was at least worth the consultation. I pretended I knew nothing about GLP-1s. The provider that I picked, she did a wonderful job of explaining absolutely everything. Also, everything matched exactly with what Dr. Tina Moore said. Make sure you're lifting weights, getting some activity in. This is how you start to eat cleaner. You don't have to do everything all at once, but just start trying to build in these habits. Also, still live your life. If someone's having a birthday, you could have a piece of birthday cake. That's totally fine. But also making these actual long-lasting changes are what's going to contribute to success. We talked about cycling, about customized doses, whether it's once a week, twice a week, and, manipulating it a little bit just depending on how someone's body does metabolize these GLP-1s. I say all that to say, my friend who went with, the Groupon route of a cash-grabbing plastic surgeon or whatever, they don't do that. It's like, here's your first 2 weeks of doses. Your next 2 weeks are going to be this dose. After that, it's going to be the highest dose humanly possible on the pre-filled pens anyway. And so that's responsible, I'm sure, to no one ever. So my friend happened to get super lucky and not have any really bad adverse effects from going on to these standard doses. And she did say that she had to force herself to eat a lot of times, and I don't feel like I have to do that very often. But there are also instances where my mom was put on the highest dose from the get-go, which did not end well. It just created so many more problems than what it was worth. She's still here. It's fine. It just really threw all of her other stuff out of balance. She couldn't even force herself to eat. It just wasn't worth it. So I am very glad that I spent all this time taking it in, making sure I understood it well, and that I had heard multiple functional medicine doctors say this, reinforce it, and really ingrain these things into me. And when I finally worked up the courage to make that appointment, making sure everything matched up. And I know I got incredibly lucky that the first provider I talked to, we clicked, number one. And also everything she said was everything that they had been advising. Also, she was incredibly responsible of when I was trying to decide if I wanted to try the semaglutide versus the tirzepatide. Her advice was start with semaglutide because, well, it's less expensive. And if money is a concern, then it's more sustainable. And I'm like, that's solid advice. She also said once someone moves from semaglutide to tirzepatide, it's usually harder to reverse that, especially if you like the tirzepatide and if money is a concern or whatever the case is. And so I really appreciated how candid she was about that. We talked about a few other things. I made sure I let her know about everything. She requested my labs. So she looked at my thyroid, which actually kind of started creeping a little bit. So I wasn't thrilled that my doctor dismissed that the numbers had been creeping. Then I was like, I should have been checking my chart. I know better, but when they call and say everything's normal, like you want to believe them. So I take a little bit of responsibility, but I was kind of annoyed. And so looking for a new primary care physician now too. There were other reasons for that. It just kind of kept building up to frustrations with my now previous primary care physician. So she looked at my labs and I told her, like, I think I'm going into perimenopause, and that's also why I was interested in GLP-1s, and like, how is this going to help? She discussed all the other benefits and how this is going to make the transition into the next phase of my life a lot easier, especially when I add stuff like training with weights or adding activity, eating cleaner, cutting out seed oils, stuff like that. So it just felt super real, super responsible. And I know I was lucky to get that on the first go of consultations. But I really also think that it made me a lot more discerning of who I'm going to talk to. So essentially, I'm still following kind of a Weight Watchers plan, eating a lot cleaner than a typical Weight Watchers user might, eat, which, no judgment, you do you. I'm just trying to do the best I can for me. And if I know I've been feeling crummy, why not try getting rid of all the junk and ultra processed stuff? If you feel fine, maybe you're fine. I don't know. This is all a total personal choice. Also, I think this goes without saying, I am not a doctor. I'm not your doctor. This is for entertainment purposes only, just so you can hear my experience and my journey with this. I'm not giving you advice at all. This is just me. You do you. If you hate the idea of GLP-1s, don't do it, and do what works for you. This is a highly personal choice, and I understand the concern, and I don't want to push everybody into it because it may not be right for everybody. I just knew I was in a place where I needed extra help because whenever I tried to exercise and work out, the next 2 days I became unreasonably hungry. Absolutely a bottomless pit. I could not stop it. Just something was not right. So bringing this all to my functional medicine doctor, she agreed that this was absolutely the way to go, is to try the GLP-1 and go on the lowest standard dose of semaglutide to make it affordable and just to get a baseline and see where we're at and what makes sense. Getting into my experience of my first month, the first week, I will say, well, I've never injected myself. I don't have a problem getting shots or anything like that. It doesn't bother me. But there's something about giving yourself an injection that I turned into quite a baby. I'm not gonna lie. It took me about 20 minutes of like pacing and and they will go over all of that. Like a good responsible provider will go over how to do the injections. They even sent videos and everything. So I wasn't concerned on the how. It was just actually like, okay, just reminding myself, people do this all the time. I just, you just have to get to like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And then for the remainder of the week, I would say up until this was on, I think, a Tuesday. I think by about Friday or so, between Tuesday and Friday-ish, maybe Saturday, somewhere around there, I would say I felt more appropriately hungry. It didn't totally curb, to where felt like I had to force myself to eat, but I felt like my hunger was what I would expect, even adding in making sure I'm using the treadmill at work and adding in weights. stuff like that. So I felt more appropriately hungry for this first 4-ish days or so. And then I noticed my hunger crept up on Saturday, and then Sunday I was like, oh my gosh. And I felt like I really had to work again to control my hunger. So then, because, we had such a, good discussion, I went ahead and did my second week injection on Monday. And then I was like, okay, we're back to feeling more appropriately hungry again. And then by Thursday, I was feeling a little bit more snacky. Friday, I was like, I'm a little bit snackier, a little bit more cravings. And then Saturday, again, I felt like I was working to keep hunger down. And then Sunday, I was like, okay, go ahead and move it up one more day, and maybe it is going to be easier for me to inject on a Sunday anyway. So week 3 was on Sunday, and I will say, like, overall, I felt like my hunger was better during that week. I didn't have as many cravings. I did still, by like Friday, Saturday, get a little bit snackier, stuff like that, or like wanting stuff like that. So then week 4, Sunday, I went ahead and did another dose. And then Monday, because that was still around the 3-week period, is when I had my next follow-up, because she did try to have a 3-week follow-up period, which I think is incredibly responsible and also makes sure that, ordering something from the pharmacy, they have enough time to make sure that you get it in time for your next dose. So I talked about all of those things with her, and we agreed for week 5, we would move into the next standard dose of 50 units. And so I thought that was really good. And we talked about the, pros and cons of like, should we do a split dose and everything like that? And we agreed, let's go ahead and try the 50 and see if that lasts throughout the week. But I will say also week 4 went pretty well overall. Same thing. I was a lot more leveled out. It wasn't too bad on the end of the week cravings or anything like that, and I felt like it was at least worth trying going into that next month to go into that higher dose and see how that goes. Getting into my 1-month results, just to wrap this up here. The first week I lost the most weight, which is not surprising given that I was making better choices and cutting out a lot of inflammatory foods. I didn't go through my kitchen and throw everything away and rebuy everything. I'm just doing better with my shopping and, kind of paring down how much of the other stuff in my pantry that I'm eating. So that first week, I ended up losing about 8 pounds, which is significant. I'm sure a lot of that was inflammation and water weight, and I cannot expect another 8-pound weight loss probably at all for this, at least if I'm doing this responsibly. And for the entire first month of my experience on semaglutide, Ozempic, whatever you want to call it, I ended up losing exactly 15 pounds, which is really great. It is more than expected. And just for a reference, my provider said about 8 pounds per month is typical, and that's what you would expect to lose on one of these GLP-1s if you are dosing them responsibly. She also agreed that that first month, a lot of that would be water weight. So we're still going to monitor it and make sure I'm not losing too quickly. But just to give you a general idea, that's not a normal expectation. I just want to keep this sustainable and make sure that it stays off in the long run. But also, I was following her advice almost to the T, in the sense of I added weight training. I was using the treadmill either at home or at work. I have a rebounder at home, so I was making sure I was taking rebounding breaks, which is really good for you, and really getting rid of most of the ultra-processed foods in my life and making those conscientious choices to have more longevity, better health, better quality of life overall. If you don't know, my degree is in chemistry, and there's a thing in analytical chemistry where you take a sample and put it into some sort of instrument for analysis, that if you put garbage in, you get garbage out. So if your sample is garbage, you're going to get garbage data. And that's how I'm treating this now. If I put garbage into my body, I'm going to get garbage results out of it. I largely skated by in my 20s doing whatever and feeling just fine. And I'm at a point now where my body is not tolerating that kind of abuse anymore. I'm also going through seeing friends and their health issues pop up and, like, trying to learn from them a little bit and do better and do my best to mitigate some of the damage that I've done to myself, or, just being a child of the 80s when we didn't know about, all of these things necessarily to the public anyway. So that's just my experience for me. If you want to hear more updates, let me know. I'm not posting as much lately. I've just had a whole heck of a lot of life going on that is getting in the way, and I'm trying to make sure I'm balancing it and not burning out. I just happen to have a little bit of time off and thought I would sit down and let you know where things are at. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I hope you have a really wonderful day.